friend.
Welcome to Heavy Metal
History.
Alright guys, welcome to this second week's episode of the Heavy Metal History Podcast. This is part 2 of part 1 of April of 1998. Of course, I'm your host Dustin, and once again, here is Matt with me.
Yeah, g'day everyone. Dustin's day is my going to bed time, so it's basically upside down time.
Yeah, it's 9 a.m. here. It's 11 p.m. for you, so hours and worlds apart.
Exactly, ready to rock and roll.
So now we're gonna go on to another record where we actually have a through line a little bit from an earlier record we talked about in the same episode. Like I said, you're going to be hearing about this guy later on, and I was not wrong. So this record is Incantation's Diabolical Conquest. It was released April 28th of 1998. And Matt, why don't you take us through the rest of this, man?
Yeah, so surprise, surprise, guess who shows up? It's Daniel Cacciato of The Chasm. He's playing bass, guitars, and vocals.
Yeah, he literally started another fucking band outside of The Chasm that was, I guess, a little more mainstream, I guess you could say, as far as, like, who knows which band more, you know?
Yeah, exactly, yep. And we've got John McIntyre on guitars and Carl Steven rounding it out on drums. With production on Bill Cockery, he did producing and engineering. Dave Shirk and Bill Yokowitz.
Yeah, sounds right.
Did the mastering with Myron Kim on the cover artwork, which looks pretty fucking badass, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, they got good cover artwork on all their shit.
Yeah. So this thing here, it was recorded at Mars Studio in Cleveland, Ohio. Same where they did the mastering for the Chasm records. It was actually mastered at the Sonoros Mastering Incorporated out at Tempe, Arizona. And again, the album was produced by Bill Cockery and Incantation.
Yeah, they recorded between November and December of 1997, and they mastered in March the 2nd of 1998.
Yeah. So renowned for the death metal classics Onward Towards Golothgar and the Mortal Throat of the Nazarene. Incantation seminal work. I reckon this is actually a pretty good album, the Diabolical Conquest. This is something that I was looking forward to having to go back and listen to again. Because this is just a very kind of there is a bit of a fury and a bit of a doom metal part of this kind of atmosphere to this record.
Yeah, and you have to wonder how much of that was due to Corchado's influence and I guess added kind of talents to the band, coming from the Chasm, since he did vocals and bass and guitars and everything else. The dude has an ear for metal, and especially atmospheric, kind of otherworldly, diabolical feelings, infused with metal.
Yeah, so there is we can basically say what we said about this before. This is still a good, solid album.
Mm-hmm.
I think it actually holds up. There's probably not a lot of information we could really find on this album. But just on a bit of a side, there was this YouTube reacts video that I was trying to find so I could put this in here to actually play it.
Mm-hmm.
It was of this woman, and she's a Christian woman, and she was like, okay, we're going to be listening to an Incantation song, and she was reading out the lyrics, and she'd be listening to it. It's nope, that's not what happens. Nope, you need to embrace the light of the Lord. Nope, we're not doing this. And then she just continued playing it. It's nope, you've got it wrong there. You do not worship the throne of the Nazarene. You worship the light of Jesus Christ. I swear to God, if I could fucking find this for you, I would play it. But it is some of the funniest shit that I've heard. And speaking of hearing, the actual production value of this album, you can really it's between this album and say that Chasm album,
mm-hmm.
night and day.
Yeah, way better.
Night and day, and there is this kind of just like really kind of just aggressive, kind of just like swampy guitar sound they got out of it, and it's just absolutely killed.
Yeah, and I mean, what are the odds too that like the Chasm also put out their third album, and then Incantation puts out their third album? They tap this guy to like come in the band and like help them out. I mean, that's fucking crazy that like that would like coalesce like that with those two bands kind of like being on the same trajectory, but one being a little bit more known and possibly better than the other, you know.
A bit more well known and a bit more kind of refined around the edges. When Incantation, I feel like they're pretty rough around the edges. The Chasm's a bit rough around the edges. So
yeah, man, I don't know. I think Incantation, they definitely have like a sound that's all their own. They're one of those death metal bands that like when you hear them, you know you're listening to them. Like, you know, with like Cannibal Corpse or Morbid Angel, like they have their own sound, and definitely that swampy guitar tone. That's an Incantation guitar tone. Like, you know it as soon as you fucking hear it. It's just like, Incantation. Yep, got it.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate too because they only managed to get Daniel Conchado on this one and only album. Yeah. He would then end up leaving the band for the next release, the Infernal Storm. It was released in 2000. Mm-hmm. So it kind of doesn't really sound like all of the others, but then at the same time, it's got that kind of familiarity there. For 20 years, this record still holds up. This record fucking kills.
Yeah, I think most of their discography is like that too, man. Like, you know, like we were talking about Cannibal Corpse, you know, most of their discography holds up. I think Incantation is the same way. I mean, they had a few bumps here and there that like some aren't as great as the other records, but I would still listen to them over like anything else as far as like death metal is concerned. And they just put out an album last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it was excellent. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I agree. It holds up. They're still fucking killing it. And if you haven't heard this record, I mean, go listen to the Chasm record that we talked about, and then go listen to this record right after, and like figure out like how much influence Corchado kind of had on this record, because it's a nice little like mixing ground, if you will, of sound, and it's really cool to hear between the two.
Nice.
All right, so guys, we're gonna go into Blind Guardian's Nightfall in Middle Earth. So Matt, why don't you take us through this one too?
Yeah, so all right, we've got Blind Guardian here, Nightfall from Middle Earth, released April 28th of 1998. Now the lineup here, you did this so you didn't have to screw up any European names.
I know.
I'm gonna do my best now.
Plus, I didn't want to talk about all the Lord of the Rings bullshit.
Yeah, so we got Hansi Kirsch on leading backing vocals and producing the album. We got Andre Ulbrich on lead rhythm and acoustic guitars and producing. Marcus Seipen on rhythm guitars and producing. And we've got Thomas Starch on drums and percussion and producing the album. Guest musicians on this album include Oliver Holsworth on bass guitar and fretless bass, Matthias Weisner on keyboards and orchestral effects, Michael Schuren on grand piano, Max Zelsner on the flute and the alto flute, rather.
Oh, he's a flautist.
He's a flautist, yep, playing the skin flute. We've got Norman Ashley and Douglas Fielding on narration. We've got Billy King, Rolf Kohler, Olaf Senkbale, and Thomas Hackman on the choir company. As for production, we've got Blind Guardian producing the record, Flemming Rasmussen with mixing, Charlie
Bauerfiend
on mixing of the interludes, and we've got those two guys, and Piet Selleck on mixing and engineering. Again, Charlie mate, we've got him recording and engineering the drums and the percussions and the lead and backing vocals, the bass guitars and pianos and the interludes. And it's pretty much all the same guys that I've mentioned before, doing more and more recording and engineering of vocals, alto flutes and flutes, and we've got rounding it out, Andreas Marshall with the covers and the story paintings.
So basically, this album is overproduced as fuck.
This is like essentially, yeah, it's almost like a, you know, the people say that Marvel Avengers Infinity War is elaborative kind of crossover.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile we have this.
Yeah.
How many fucking people work on this? Jesus Christ.
That's a lot of people that worked on this record. Not just like the engineers, but like the musicians, like. And I mean, you can hear it in the record. Like, this record sounds phenomenal with everything that went into it. Like, it's not a bad sounding record. All the playing is spot on. You can tell every ounce of work by every person went into this 100%, and it shows.
Yeah. And I feel like it's important to, we might spend, 5 minutes talking, doing, long introductions of, everyone that kind of works on this record. But it's really just, the little players behind the scenes of things that really make, can really make or break an album.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And I feel like it's really important to kind of acknowledge that, too.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I've, kind of upped our notes a bit with, going through, every person that's worked on a record, because everybody did something, they contributed in some different way, and whether it was minuscule or exponentially bigger and bigger, whoever did what, it still matters, and it still probably made the record sound a certain way, no matter what we as listeners notice versus what the band notices playing and recording it.
Yeah. So so The Nightfall in Middle-earth is the sixth full-length studio album by German power metal band Blind Guardian. It was released on April 28th, 1988 on Virgin Records. On 1998, rather, on Virgin Records.
So massive record label.
Massive record label, yep. These guys are fucking huge.
Yep.
It's a concept album based on J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion, a book from the tales of the first age of Middle-earth. Middle-earth being where the Lord of the Rings happened, where there was, the Shires and the Bagginses and all those fun things.
I was going to say, too, loves. Man, I wrote all these notes about what it's about, and I don't think we should, read it and go through it, because it's a lot of shit.
Yeah, basically,
just go read the fucking Silmarillion. We're not going to go... I wrote all these notes about, what each song is about. I don't want to go into it, to be honest.
Look, we might put it up on the website. We might not. But,
totally.
Yeah, there is a sense... You can really tell that this is almost this is so just, typical of power metal. It's a love letter to Tolkien, the godfather of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read the Silmarillion. I might talk to the missus. I'm sure she's read it, and I'm sure she loves it because she's a big nerd like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's it recounts the story of the first age of Middle-earth and the War of the Jewels, not to be confused with the Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
The album contains not only songs but also parts. It also breaks up actual songs with spoken word narration. That kind of gives you a bit of kind of background into the actual story of the album.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely went in depth of trying to convey okay, we really like the story, but we want to make it musical, and I think that takes a lot of talent to be able to do that and portray it with, I guess, how should I put this? Portray it with its due, giving its the original thing its due, but in a different format. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they were trying to put on a play at a local house, in their living room of the Silmarillion. It's we're gonna write a fucking power metal album based on all this shit, make it as operatic and fantastical as the book seems to us in our heads, but with a new dimension. So I think in that regard, they fucking did it.
Yeah, and it's actually exactly, and I think the Fellowship of the Ring came out a year after this. in '99?
I don't know.
I think it did.
Wrong dude.
Yeah, but either way, like that, they were filming all of those Lord of the Rings films around about this time.
Okay.
That this album came out, because that was like a year long, probably even longer than that, like an actual like long time. That was a long ass shoot they did for that for those films.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. There's like 3 of them, and they're all like 3 hours long. So
yeah, exactly. They got everyone at the same place, and they was like, right, we're going to do all of these all at once, pretty much.
That's kind of what I wonder about the Avengers movie that just came out with Black Panther being in it, and Black Panther just coming out. I'm wondering if like they shot that shit kind of like in tandem, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, like the album cover of this is pretty cool. It has
It is cool.
You know, I believe it's the main character of the story, Lithurian dancing in front of Morgoth. Morgoth being the big baddie of this kind of story and album, and it's actually widely considered as Blind Guardian's most well-known and well-received album art of their discography.
Yeah, I think it's a fucking badass looking cover. I kind of mentioned that at the beginning of the episode. It looks cool as fuck, you know. And you know, Morgoth is Sauron's master, so he's like the bigger version of Sauron. So that's one thing I know about this shit.
Yeah, and Morgoth not to be confused with like, even there like some guy in black metal that go is like, you know, gangster name is Morgoth, so to speak.
Probably. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised considering how many black metal bands take their names from Middle Earth. You know, Bertram, Gorgoroth. Yeah, fucking list goes on, man.
Yeah, and this was actually the first Blind Guardian album to actually be released in the US.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's their 6th album by this point. If it wasn't apparent by now that they have mainstream appeal, I think this just kind of like did it in. It was like, I mean, too, they're on Virgin Records. It's a huge fucking record label at this point, man. It's kind of weird to me that the previous 5 albums wouldn't have been released in the US. I mean, they do eventually get released in the US, obviously, but prior to this, like, the band, they are like the peak power metal band. They are the beginning, like, biggest power metal band, probably in the whole genre as far as it's concerned. In my little opinion of what I know about power metal. So
yeah, and I feel like for 20 years this album still holds up.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I listened, like I said, I listened to like one song on it, and I was like, all right, that's cool. The one thing I do like, man, because I'm a big Queen fan, there's definitely influences with like progressive rock, and it does have been kind of compared to like Queen's operatic approach with like the dense choir vocal harmonies, and it's set against like those swirling multi-part guitar lines. So I love Queen, so I can appreciate that aspect of it, you know, where they're like going with that vibe.
Yeah.
But it's got folk instruments, you got flutes, you got violins, and it's all against like this fucking heavy metal kind of background. That's the thing too, is I feel like heavy metal is actually in the background of everything else that's going on. It's kind of the craziest thing. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I think that's a pretty cool and interesting way to not do like a kind of a concept album where you're telling a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that wraps up that record. I guess go listen to it. I don't know if you like power metal.
If you like Lord of the Rings, or you like, you know, fantasy like orcs
yeah. If you want a story being told to you, I think that's another reason to go listen to it. Like I said, I can appreciate it for what it is, man. It's definitely cool that they do that, and that they took that story and like made it into a different medium. But yeah, I don't know, power metal. So the next album we're going to talk about here is Children of Bodom, Something Wild. Now, this was actually released November 16th, 1997 in Finland, but the American release date was April 28th, 1998. So about 6 7 months later. Not too bad. That typically happens with like European bands, especially back in the day. So the lineup for this record, you have Alexi Laiho on vocals, lead guitar, songwriting, and keyboards. Alexander Kuopola on rhythm guitar and keyboards. And Jane Werman on keyboards. Henka Sapala on bass. And Jaska... Oh, man. Reitkinen?
Ratikinen, yeah.
Ratikinen. Yeah,
yeah,
that works. On drums. God damn. Fucking names. Ugh. The production on this record is produced by Anssi Kipo, Alexi Laiho, Jaska Ratikinen, and Children of Bodom. It was recorded and mixed by Anssi Kipo. The assistant engineer was Joke Reinahan. Assistant mixing engineer was Pasi Karpa. The cover photo was by Graham French. And the cover artwork was by Flea Black. Probably not that person's real name, I hope. Who knows? It was recorded between July and August of 1997 in Astia Studios. This was actually recorded when the band was known as Inearthed. They changed their name to actually escape a record deal, which they pretty much deemed it was a ripoff. And I mean, let's be fair, what record deal isn't a fucking ripoff? And they were subsequently picked up by Spine Farm Records. So, Talking of Trees off of Shining was re-recorded during these sessions, but later scrapped. And track 7 is the only song with actual lyrics that were written prior to recording. The rest of the lyrics to all the other songs were actually improvised on the spot as Laiho screamed. How crazy is that to just like improvise shit on the spot? You don't fucking do that. You don't do that.
No.
That's bad songwriting, and how are you ever going to be able to play these songs live because you don't know the lyrics or the words? I mean... Exactly,
yeah.
I mean,
you probably
it
have
worked.
something idea, like you've probably just written down, yeah, it works for you, but, you know, don't do it again.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it worked. Like, for what this album is, it fucking worked in spades. So, I don't know, man. Like, it could have blown up in their faces, and they could have, like, fucked themselves really hard, being like, we don't know the lyrics to anything because we just kind of made them on the spot. But, you know what? Doesn't matter. So, the intros to tracks 1 and 6 were taken from the movie It, which I actually watched last night. The original one, the one in 1990. It does not hold up. That movie is terrible.
Yeah. Did you see the new one?
I did. And it was fucking awesome. And like,
yeah, I liked it. Yeah,
people were talking about how good the original was, and I didn't go back and watch it at that time, but I watched it last night, and I was like, "What the fuck are these people talking about? This movie is terrible." So I don't know, whatever. And the other movie was Ben-Hur, which was released in 1959. So it, you know, don't get me wrong, there is actually some cool sound bites in it. Especially the one about like eating the children and shit like that. That's a cool one. But
it's fucking metal.
Yeah.
Fucking
tracks.
Kids.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Tim Curry. Don't get me wrong. He had some good moments in the movie, but the rest of it, man, yeah. So tracks 3 and 4 both sample passages from Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's work. And the end of track 7 features a short keyboard passage played by Alexi and Alexander in unison. The track is officially known as Coda, which is about 1 minute and 19 seconds, but it basically samples the melody from the theme to Miami Vice. I don't know if they were big Miami Vice fans, like what the deal was, but I know like as far as like the keyboard playing in this band is concerned, like they fucking kill it on keyboards.
Yeah, I've never really been a big fan of this band.
Really?
Nah, I just couldn't get into them.
I'm back and forth with them. Like, their early shit, especially this record, like, I can get behind, but, like, anything past Hate Crew Death Roll, ugh, nope, no, won't do it. It's terrible. But, I don't know, I keep holding out hope that they're going to put out a good record again, but you never know.
Yeah.
The original pressing contains an 8th track titled Bruno the Pig, consisting simply of 10 seconds of silence. Yeah, I don't know. That's like a weird thing. But...
Again, there's another. You're giving me more reasons to like not like these guys.
Well, I mean, it would have been funnier too if they put like a pig oink in there or something, or like a whatever. You know?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We can do that. Yeah.
But you have to think too, man. So technically, this was in 1997, and this was a year that kind of the band redefined what I dare to say, even invented kind of a whole new genre of metal. And Children of Bodom was kind of that band, and Something Wild took metal. It took the metal community by storm, man, because the music was so undecipherable, so innovative, so strange that kind of like, you know, Bodom took melodic death metal, power metal, classic music, and created like this strange brew that critics everywhere tried to define. They just called it extreme metal, power death metal, or even just like Bodom metal, calling it like anything you wanted. But nobody can really deny that these guys created something completely new, man. I mean, that's kind of my opinion of it too. Like they definitely like pushed metal into like a new thing here.
Yeah, no. I like I said, like this. I could never really get into this, guys.
Totally.
I always thought it was a little bit too kind of just like schizophrenic for what it really is.
It is,
and for what I would be, kind of willing to accept out of hearing this kind of style of music, but it's all just kind of all over the place when, compared to like, say like grindcore or stuff like that. Yeah, it's all over the place. But you expect it to be.
Yeah. And one last thing that I'm gonna kind of actually close out here with for this record, he kind of talks about that, about structure and or lack thereof. So basically, he says, when the album first came out, we were just kids, 17 and 18 years old. With every song on solo, I felt I had to show everything that I had. It was a lot more about showing off. I felt I needed to go out of my way to prove I'm a kick-ass guitar player. Those early songs still definitely had a lot of feeling in them, a lot of soul. But at that age and at that phase of the band, we weren't as worried about song structure. It's just cool riffs one after another, but most of the songs were kind of broken structure-wise, as opposed to, he's actually talking about the latest Children of Bodom, I Worship Chaos, where there's actually verse, bridge, chorus, verse, an actual structure. It's now something you can actually remember from the first time you listen to it, unlike on Something Wild, where you're like, whoa, what just happened? There's still some good energy on that album, though. Just a lot of fucking teenage rage, and that's what it's all about, really. So, I mean, he even says it himself right there, man. There's no fucking structure, no rhyme or reason. It's just like riff, guitar solo. Like, it's just fucking everything in there. So, it is what it is, man.
Yeah, no, and also on the reissue of this album too, there's actually a lot of cover songs. They did like a cover of Silent Scream, by Slayer, Don't Stop at the Top by the Scorpions, and finally a cover of Massive Gnosis by Sepultura.
Hey. Yeah, Sepultura, that's a good cover. It's not bad.
That is, yeah, that's actually a good one. Yeah, I actually like that.
All right, so before we go on to the next record, we're going to play this quick little interview, and we'll be right back.
I think I was like 3 or 4 years old or something. My dad was playing Dire Straits and Beatles albums or something, and I was just digging the guitar sound. I was just, liking it. I mean, I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but, I was still digging it, And after that, when I was 7 years old, I started playing violin and, just playing classical music for about 4 or 5 years. But then, at the same time, I was getting more into rock music, more into hair metal, more into heavy metal and shit like that. Because my big sister, she was into, just bands like Poison, Motley Crue, Twist Sister, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses and shit like that, When somebody was asking me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I think my answer was always that, I either wanted to be a rally driver or a rock star. My dad bought me my first guitar when I was 11 years old, and it's been just all about the guitar ever since.
I started with piano And then when I was 9 years old, I started to play French horn. When I got older, I realized that it wasn't my instrument at all. And when I was maybe 12, 13 years old, I met Alexi, and we started this band, like playing covers from these bands we both liked, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and stuff. And then maybe after 2 years or so, we started to compose own songs. Wanted to do our own demo tape from our first songs. We were maybe 15 years old when we did our first demo tape. I think we both were really ambitious about this thing, because we both just wanted to play music and to become a real band like we are now. So it's kind of dream come true.
So me and Jaska were just rehearsing at my dad's garage, just, you know, setting demo tapes to record labels and shit like that. Then I think 1995, Alexander joined the band. Henke joined the band as well.
I think I was about 11 or something when my big brother was always listening to quite hard stuff like metal and hard rock. Then I had to listen to those tracks like Slayer and Pantera, Sepultura. And I started to like them. I asked my mom to buy me a guitar, and she was like, "Yeah, I can buy you some very cheap one, because I don't want to spend any money on it, because you will get bored of it anyway soon." Alex asked me if I could join the band as a bassist, and then I said, "Yeah, why not?" I was in the band. We did the third demo tape, and we were sending it all over the world, and we never got any reply.
Everybody just rejected us, you know, every single one, you know, even the labels that actually nowadays actually would have wanted to us, but still, you know, fuck it.
Then we got a deal offer from some European small label, and
It was a total rip-off deal.
And then we went to the studio and recorded the first album for the label. And when the album was done,
somebody from Spine Farm called me up, and he wanted to sign Children of Bodom to Spine Farm, right? You know, I told the guy that, you know, we're actually fucking signed to another label. So, and then the guy told me that, you know, what you're gonna have to do is that, you know, you could change your name, just tell the guy that you just fucking quit the band, and that's it. And then kind of start another band called Children of Bodom, who accidentally is coming up with a new album called Something Wild, and that's it. Our previous keyboard player, he was kind of a flake, you know, so I actually had to kick him out, which was a bummer, because he was a friend of mine, but anyway, I had to fucking do it, right? So we had 2 fucking weeks to come up with a new keyboard player. And then, you know, Jaska was going to the same school with Janne, and then Jaska asked him, you know.
I got a text message from Jaska that if I wanted to try and play a little bit heavy metal. I'm like, sure, I will try.
Because at the time, Janne was into jazz and stuff like that, you know. He wasn't really into playing metal or anything, you know.
But then he sent me back, no, well, we're still gonna try with our current keyboard player. I'm like, okay, whatever, guys. A few weeks later, he was like, hey, could you come and, you know, jam with us or whatever, try it out.
When he showed up, he had short hair, he had a white t-shirt on, and he was just being so quiet, like so different than he is nowadays, that's for sure.
The Booze Brothers!
Et vedä enimmäistä viskiä, et sit se jotenkin niinku aukenee se ääni.
Fuck! You're such an animal.
Tarso! Tarso!
Hey, Jan, are you drunk?
Yes. Well, my parents put me to piano lessons when I was 5. At first, I wasn't that excited because it was like classical music and stuff, and at some point I got a little bit like tired of that shit. And I quit the lessons, and then my dad was just teaching me for a while. And then I applied to the Helsinki Pop Jazz Conservatory at the age of 10. And then I studied there for 6 years.
When he started ripping on those fucking keyboards, you know, especially when we had a song Lake Bodom on the first album, and we told him that, okay, dude, can you pull up a solo in there? I mean, you can compose it, you can write it down, whatever you want, you know, just do it. And he was like, you know, fuck it, I'll just play like this, you know. Well, then he fucking did it, and it was like, wow! You know, it was just, we were just stunned. We were like amazed that, Jesus fucking Christ, this guy's playing like James Johansson or something like that.
For me, the whole improvising, soloing thing has been like one of the most important things about playing always. And maybe that's why when I first jammed with the COB guys and improvised a little bit, they were astounded by the shit I was playing, because maybe it's not that common for guys to, you know, play like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I was 17 when we went to the studio, I guess, or was I even 16? Even though we did the demo tapes in the same place, but still it was different because we were doing an album now, and it was really scary. But yeah, it turned out well, and when the album was done, but we had no expectations with the sales or anything. We were actually really afraid of how people would react for this kind of music, because it was so weird mix of black metal and classical and this kind of like a guitar solo Yngwie Malmsteen thing. So then it almost hit the charts in the top 40 in Finland, and that was quite unbelievable. I think it went to number 44 or something.
Originally, I was supposed to just play the studio sessions for the first album and then kind of disappear. But so happened that, you know, first gigs started coming, and, you know, the COB guys were asking if you could you come and play these gigs as well? I was like, sure. And, you know, things just started moving on, and before we realized, I was stuck with these motherfuckers. So it's like,
when we had our like first Finnish tour, which was about 3 gigs in a row, then that's the first time when I saw the guy drunk, and that's when I knew that he's the fucking man.
But by the time we were recording the second album, I felt that I was already a real member of this group.
Nile amongst the catacombs of Nefren Ka. It was released April 28th of 1998, and there's some pretty metal additional musicians on this, as we'll see as we get down to it. But your lineup for this record is Carl Sanders on lead vocals and guitar, Chief Spires on vocals and bass guitar, and Pete Hamora vocals and drums. That's like the main kind of lineup for Nile at this point. Just a 3-piece. Eventually they would go on to be a 4-piece, if I'm not mistaken. So the additional musicians on this is some crazy ass shit here. You have Drilbu Dungar, who plays thigh bone flutes on the Turkish gongs. So playing an instrument made out of human beings. It's already pretty cool. You have Mahala Kapala playing the Damaru human skull drums. So more human body parts being played as instruments. That's fucking brutal right there, man.
That's fucking metal.
Yeah. That's, I couldn't believe that when I read that. I was like, Jesus, way to take it to the next level. So Mudflap, guy named Mudflap, does additional vocals on a German song. It's a German name. Die Krieg. I'm not even gonna try. Fuck it.
Like the Asreich.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Our European people, please don't slaughter me. We're trying our best.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not a German speaker, even though my last name is German as hell. And you have Gaito Drupka, who did the choirs, and Panga Grande, who was also additional vocals on that German song. For production, you have Adam Peterson, who did the artwork. Bob Moore was the producer and engineer. Matthew Jacobson was the executive producer. Earl Sanders was the producer, and Bill Yerkowitz was the executive producer. So quite a few people working on this record, along with the band. Pretty solid lineup there too. It was recorded at the Sound Lab in Columbia, South Carolina, and this is the debut album from Nile. Pretty strong fucking album to start off with, man. I can't think of a better kind of debut album from a band except like maybe Slipknot. You know, they had a solid as fuck debut album.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this band is kind of solid, but when you basically look at this album compared to what they're putting out now, and they're still putting out music now, 20 years later, more than 20 years later, they're still putting out music. This band has a very kind of like high kind of floor, but a low ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bar was set way too high with this band, that everything else is basically right at that level. And it hasn't really kind of progressed in the last 20 years. There's no real kind of like, real kind of progression, any kind of risk that is taken. And that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're halfway right there. I think they've progressed a little bit. I know with the album they put out their last album, I forget when it came out, probably like 2015, 16. That album was destructive, man. It was so fucking heavy. It was good. I listened to it constantly. It was a solid as fuck album. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. They definitely have a sound and a style, and it's a pretty much a straight through line through most of their discography. I'd say like Cephalic and their last album are standouts. But I mean, as far as like this being their first album, it's very solid, very well crafted.
Yeah, so I mean, for anyone who hasn't basically heard of Nile, basically the whole kind of shtick with them is a lot of their songs basically center around Egyptian mythology, being an American kind of like a death metal band.
Yep, and they still. I'm waiting for the day they run out of Egyptian mythology.
Oh, it'll never stop.
So, like we said, it was released April 28th through Relapse Records, and this album is considered to be their breakthrough record. In kind of contrast with the following album, Black Seeds of Vengeance, the songs are a lot shorter in length on this record than the songs on pretty much every Nile album after this. The songs get progressively longer, between like 6 and 8 minutes. Some 5-minute songs.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of another kind of reason why I just really haven't been able to get into Nile.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing these guys live. I think like I think I went to a gig or something, and Unearth was supporting Nile, and I went just to go see Unearth, and I stuck around for like a bit of these guys, and I was like, okay, I get it, and then just kind of like left.
You know, it took me a while too. I was the same way with Nile, and then I just kind of like made myself listen to it, and I found some songs and albums that are just ridiculously heavy. I'd say, Matt, go back and listen to their last album, man. I think you'll dig it. It's got some fucking heavy ass songs on it.
Yeah, no, I'll have to check that out, and I really do feel like that as kind of a songwriter and as also a guitarist, I really do feel that Carl Sanders is pretty underrated.
Yeah, big time. I mean, he also, especially too, considering he does vocals at the same time he plays too. That's one of the hardest things to do, especially playing death metal. Holy shit.
Yeah, and like the speed and the basically the technicality that these guys play at it, fucking hell.
Yeah, he's up there with the Dying Fetus dude. Dude, could you imagine if they did a band together? That'd be insane.
Fucking hell, yeah, that'd be rad.
So getting back to the album itself, not only do they draw from like ancient Egyptian mythology, they also draw a lot from H.P. Lovecraft, and this album title is a reference to an H.P. Lovecraft story called The Outsider. the phrase is actually featured in the song "Beneath Eternal Oceans of Sand," and it has lyrics kind of paraphrased from the story itself. I don't know that necessarily. I mean, I know what paraphrasing means, but you have to wonder how much they kind of like ripped off in a way. How much was verbatim and how much was like, well, here's the idea. Because you never know with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So a little bit about what The Outsider is about, as well as the title. In Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, Neferka was an Egyptian pharaoh whose unspeakable cult worship led him to be stricken from almost all Egyptian records. The catacombs where he is buried are referenced in several Lovecraft stories, as well as many other stories by many other mythos kind of authors.
Yeah, it's especially that, and I also believe that the old Warner Brothers mummy films from like the 30s, and even like the stuff that's come out recently is kind of goes on the same kind of like referencing like the whole like Neferka thing.
Yeah, I've heard that about the original Mummy. I haven't seen like the new one. I probably won't.
Don't bother.
Yeah, the thing with like mummies and ancient Egyptian kind of pharaohs is once they're buried and put in those like tombs, they get like this whole other legend that kind of comes with them. It seems like it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the whole thing, going back into Egyptian history, they'd have basically essentially slaves like building as soon as like they've been like coronated as king or queen, or even like born into status. You'd have like the slaves working on the tomb basically from when they're born like right until they die. And the larger the tip of the pyramid is supposed to basically have your status and how like closer you are to like the afterlife. It's just and they filled it with like all kinds of just like traps, not only so people could get in, so that evil spirits couldn't get out.
Yeah, the traps and curses were always what interested me when you would like read about stuff like that, and it'd be like, oh, this tomb has a curse, and then all these people died. Especially, I think with King Tut was like the big one when they unearthed his, and then like all these people started dying, and it turns out, the tomb was just filled with mold and all kinds of diseases.
Yeah, exactly. And I always felt like at school, especially like at like what you consider your elementary school, there'd be the kids that were interested in ancient Egypt, like history and mythology, and then there's the kids that weren't.
Mm-hmm.
I was always a kid that wasn't interested in it, and you can tell those kids.
I guess I was a little bit interested in it, but I don't know. I kind of hated history in general because I was always like, why do we need to learn about old stuff?
And basically the way that like Carl Sanders, and bring it back to this album, and you can basically tell that Carl Sanders was like one of those like kids like that was really into it.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, it's all over the obviously the band name is the big giveaway there with Nile, but even like their album art covers, pretty much everything is just infused with tons and tons of Egyptian mythology.
Yeah, and I feel like the album cover for this particular album here, I feel like it's pretty iconic because when you think of Nile, I always somehow think of this album cover.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what it is. I'll always see like shirts with this album cover like on it. So
yeah, I think so too. So I guess kind of finishing up a little bit about this album here, the orchestral intro on Ramesses, Bringer of War, was strongly inspired by Gustav Holst's Mars movement from the Planets, which was written between 1914 and 1916. And I listened to that briefly just to kind of get a feel for what it sounded like, and it's strongly inspired is a
very kind of loose term.
Yeah, it's very inspired, if anything. And so the title of the song, the German song, actually translates to the revenge war song of the Assyrians. And so the kind of like the crux or theme of the song is if it came straight from the field journal of a German archaeologist. So it's got a story within itself with that song.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the whole kind of like conflict that's going on with the Assyrians. right now. Different to Syrians, but it's a conflict nonetheless.
Yep. I don't know.
So yeah, it's something that I really can't speak too kind of like broadly on, just because I don't have all the facts. But that's something that I do know.
Yeah, I don't keep up with stuff like that too much, but I believe you.
So 20 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is the one thing about Nile is every album of theirs is fairly strong. It's not a bad album. It sounds good. You know, it's a little like production wise, it's a little faded, I guess is a good way to put it. But you know, I'd still put this on today and be like, all right, this is it. We're good for now. This is what I'm doing with my day.
Yeah, exactly. I think everything they have put out in their like storied career is really kind of consistent. Whether or not it actually reaches kind of like the next level, is debatable, but it is consistent nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. You know, I think with like the technicality and stuff that they try to infuse in there too, I don't really know how much they need to go outside of the box either, because they're pretty much like a staple of death metal. And, you know, while they don't necessarily come from Florida, they're still pretty close being in South Carolina. And, you know, they've kind of fostered their own thing, which makes them stand out enough from the rest of death metal. And especially like considering when this came out in 1998, it was a little bit of a game changer, you know, for all the other death metal bands. It was like everybody else needed to kind of step up their game after this came out.
Yeah. Well, speaking of game changers.
Yes.
What you want to introduce the next album?
Yeah, so the next album we're going to talk about is Cephalic Carnage, Conforming to Abnormality. April 29th of 1998, and the lineup for this record was Lindsay Leal on vocals, Zach Joe on guitar and bass, only for tracks 1 through 8, John Merriman on drums, Steve Goldberg on guitar and bass, tracks 1 through 8, Josh Mullen on bass, tracks 9 through 28, and Brian Goldberg on vocals for track 16. And I had the pleasure of touring with these guys in 2010, and I can tell you they are one of the funnest bands to watch live, just because of like how spastic and crazy all their songs are.
Yeah, I could no doubt.
Yeah, this is one of those bands that they're pretty DIY. That's for sure. That's one thing. But I mean, they've also been on major metal labels as well, and I think with Cephalic Carnage, you know, it's like grindcore, death metal, fucking. I don't really know how to categorize them, to be honest.
Yeah, it's almost like a little bit kind of just like kind of almost avant-garde.
Yeah.
In the sense of you know, they've kind of go with what is kind of popular and then kind of like turn it on its head.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember, I think it was like some of their later albums, like Xenosapien rather, and there was a fucking another one that came out in between that and I think it's like Misled by Certainty.
Yeah.
Back in like 2010.
Yeah, that was the last album they put out.
Yeah, no, Anomalies is what I'm thinking of. Yeah, Anomalies.
Yeah.
Like you could really tell that metalcore was like popular. So I think there was like even some songs that even just simply just straight up parodied it.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been a minute since I've listened to these guys, besides like listening to it for this, but they're all over the place, man. They like just doing whatever whatever they can, like musically, and it's there's even one song too. I think it might have been on Anomalies as well, where it's like a straight up grindcore song, and then it just ends with like this stupid, ridiculous like deathcore kind of breakdown, even with like the brutal vocals. I was like, oh, I see what you guys are doing here.
Yeah.
So the band was formed in Denver, Colorado in 1992 by vocalist Len Ziegler and guitarist Zach Joe. They recorded, both of them, just two of them, they recorded a demo EP called Scrape My Lungs in 1993, but then they took like a 3-year break and kind of reformed in 96, and then that's when they got their drummer John Merriman, guitarist Steve Goldberg, and bassist Doug Williams. So they kind of had a full lineup at this point. And I think they were trying to go for like, you know, a little less DIY, a little more like solid band lineup, you know, so they could play shows, they could write a full record, and, you know, have more musicians kind of in the pot, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be a little bit more kind of like professional, a bit more kind of like solid around the edges.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, kind of like grindcore is like it's so like, the majority of grindcore bands out these days probably just like 1-2 man bands, and then
pretty much.
Yeah, and it's all just kind of like, I've put this record out and it's now on SoundCloud. And you could really just imagine, like, if these guys were doing that exact same thing today, if Cephalic Carnage was forming today, what it would sound like.
It would be interesting, that's for sure, because I know, like, the fact that they started in 1992 and then pretty much it took them 5-6 years to get, like, their first album out, it shows like kind of the technological spot where they were at. They couldn't really get a full thing going up until a certain point in time, and then finally they got something out.
Yeah, exactly.
So getting back to the record, Merriman, he also collaborated with the Secret Chiefs, and soon after the reformation of the band, their second demo EP, Fortuitous Oddity, was released. And during 1997, Cephalic Carnage financed its own tour across the United States. So that's something you don't really hear of too much, as a band paying for their own tour. You usually see record labels helping them out, or them getting on like a tour, like, you know.
Yeah, they'll have to buy their way onto a tour.
Yes, that does happen a lot. So you know, I mean, in 1997, 1998, it's probably a little easier to tour. You could play shows to packed out crowds. You know, nothing's really flooded quite yet, but I would still have to think too, just kind of self-financing it is probably pretty rough.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was a little bit of a problem, I guess you could say, with the label that they got on, if I'm not mistaken. So in 1998, the band caught the attention of Italian record label called Headfucker Records, and they are the label that released the Conforming to Abnormality in the same year. But if I remember reading correctly, there was like some kind of weird falling out between them and the record label, and this is for like when they were trying to do a re-release or something like that, and they couldn't get the rights back to the record. It was kind of a big fucking deal or something like it. I couldn't find it again when I tried to look it up, and I was like, what the hell? But I'm positive I fucking read it.
Yeah, I think I remember reading this too, but what they ended up doing in about 2008 or so, the album was remixed, remastered, and repackaged, and it had about 20 bonus tracks added to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was actually done out via Relapse Records. It was done about April 29 back in 2008. And the bonus tracks came from the band's split they did with Anal Blast.
Yeah.
Plus a new song sung by the actual former bassist Josh Mullen, who actually did he did the bass tracks on the new bonus tracks there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's what happened, is like their kind of loophole to get around it is just re-record some stuff and add things to it. But, you know, it's that's the thing with record labels, man. It's hard to... I don't know if you read about what happened with Leviathan the other day, but some record labels re-releasing all his stuff on vinyl, and it's 100% without his permission, and it's not master tracks. It's all from it's just a rip of a CD put onto a vinyl, and that's it.
That's fucking shit.
Yep.
Don't buy that.
Nope, don't buy that. Do not support Back on Black Records at all. Do not fucking buy their shit. I think they do it a lot with bands, from what I understand. Yeah, anyways, we're digressing here. So Williams actually left the band in 1999 and joined Origin. So that's when Josh Mullen kind of replaced him and toured with the Milwaukee Metal Fest in 98, the Dallas Grind Fest, the Ohio Death Fest, and the Denver Hate Fest in 1999. Kind of skipped over a little information here in the beginning, but it was recorded at Bedlam Hell in Denver, Colorado of January 1998. It was mixed at FTM Studios in Denver, February of 1998, and mastered at the Recording Workshop in Chillicothe, Ohio, May of 1998. I don't know if that's necessarily correct, because the fact that every release date that I could find for it says it was released in April. So I don't really know what dates are wrong or what's correct. I mean, they could not have been released in April too. I don't know, but everything I looked up said April. So as far as I know, it was in April.
Yep, that's our story, and we're sticking with it.
Yep. So I mean, kind of the one final thing about this record, man, it really unveiled a style of extreme metal that was completely unique in its makeup. You had kind of like we were talking about, it blended like really mind-melting guitar technicality, and you have kind of just human drumming there, very schizophrenic vocals. You have jazz sensibilities and just really devastating bass blast in there with it too. So it's all over the place, man, but in a good way.
Yeah, it's it really kind of did lay kind of the foundations for a lot of what kind of grindcore kind of became there for a time, when you did incorporate a lot of kind of like of the saxophone, of the jazz music, and kind of really and really kind of did also keep kind of going on the really kind of tongue-in-cheek aspect that really, like, a lot of grindcore does have.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like these guys are big weed smokers as well, so a lot of their songs have to do with smoking weed, and I think a lot of grindcore bands are like that too, for the most part. Maybe not Pig Destroyer, but I think a little bit with Agoraphobic Nosebleed and Brutal Truth, bands like that, they're like very into the weed smoking culture.
Yeah.
I think they even have a song, or Cephalic Carnage has a song called "Kill for Weed."
yeah. I think that was off the last album they put out.
Yeah. I always thought that was a great track title.
Yeah. No, but this is basically the kind of the stepping stones and the foundation of a band that I think really only got better and better. As kind of the years went on. That last album they put out, I think Zach Joe, he had left the band. And you could really tell that there was like some kind of creative force that was kind of gone, and the album, I think, really did kind of suffer from it. But those kind of, I think it was, Anomalies and Xenosapien, those are fucking standout albums still to this day.
I mean, Zach leaving the band definitely hurt, but I think Steve is one of the main kind of songwriters of the band. I don't know. I know when I toured with him, like, the reception was really well to that album. It seemed like that it was selling well and that people were there to hear those new songs. So I don't know. I mean, you never know when somebody leaves how much they contributed or added to songwriting or structuring and stuff like that. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, true. No, it's I'm just kind of like a bit jealous. I've never actually got to see these guys play. I'm sure they've come to Australia like once or twice, but I probably didn't even know about it. So yeah.
Well, the good news is they are touring again, so that
really?
Yes, they're just now starting to tour again. I noticed their social media presence has picked back up, so that probably means they're going to be working on something here soon, I would assume. So that'd be pretty fucking cool. I'd be curious to see what a Cephalic Carnage album looks like in 2018, 2019, you know?
Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to keep my keep my kind of, ear to the ground with that one.
Yeah. That's a crazy thing too. It's been eight years since they put out an album, so it's about time. I know they took a little bit of a hiatus there, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
Yeah, no. But yeah, this album, do we still think it holds up?
I think production-wise, it doesn't sound very good to me, but it captures like kind of that raw grindcore sound, which I appreciate. But I think knowing what their later records kind of sound like, they really refine their sound a lot more, and it sounds a lot better to me. So I have a little bit of a hard time listening to this record.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna say no, but it's not. But don't discount this band just because of this one record.
Totally, because like the playing is spot on, the sound that they're going for is spot on. Pretty much everything else about the record's spot on. They spawn like a new kind of genre, so to speak, too. It's like, I think they even influence bands kind of like Psyopus, excuse me, a little bit as well too. If you think about it, Psyopus is very spastic and grindcore, but they could get like pretty heavy and pretty like metalcore as well.
Yeah. Although I could really never get into them, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we're gonna move on to our final album here, and man, what an album it is! We're gonna be talking about Suffocation, Despise the Sun EP. It was released April 30th of 1998. Matt, do you want to take us through this final record here?
Yeah, sure. So it's almost the classic Suffocation lineup. We've got Frank the Tank Mullins on vocals, Doug Soretto on guitar, along with Terrence Hobbs, Chris Richards on the bass, and replacing Mike Smith, who I believe had someone replace him. I can't remember who. Just bringing this up now. Oh yeah, Doug Bonn, who played on Pierce from Within. Replacing Doug Bonn was Dave Colross on the drums.
Mm-hmm.
Production-wise, we have Doug Soretto doing the design, the layout, the logo, and the cover concept for the EP. We've had Brian Harding, the engineering assistant, Steve Hetridge, the mixing assistant and the mastering assistant, Robert Weigel with the band photography, always solid. Yep. Dave Colross with the cover concept, Jason Fligman, the executive producer, Travis Smith, the artwork, the design, the layout, and the cover concept. And to round this all out, you have the one and only Scott Burns as the producer, the engineering, the mixing, and the mastering.
Yeah, man.
So
Scott Burns.
Just with that name alone, you know it's going to be good.
Yes, and this is probably like one of the best sounding Suffocation albums in their entire discography by far.
Yeah, exactly. And considering, like 1999, with this kind of like, it's one of the best kind of like best sounding death metal like EPs of essentially the 90s.
Yeah, one of them. Probably, I don't know if it's necessarily the best, but it's definitely up there, man.
Oh yeah.
Even like Pierce from Within sounds pretty good, but it's a little too bass heavy on some parts. But
Yeah.
goddamn, this whole thing it's a scorcher from start to finish.
Yeah, and this EP here, it actually came out on Vulture Records. They didn't actually, like, I think at the time they were either with or they just got or they left Roadrunner Records. This was back when Roadrunner Records weren't doing things like Nickelback, Slipknot, and like whatever's kind of popular now. But back when they had like fucking solid, just like death metal, they had like fucking Deicide, these guys, old Sepultura as well. So you basically, that's just to goes to show you just how kind of long ago this album came out or this EP came out when Roadrunner Records was kind of considered new and edgy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, death metal has like a weird place in history, especially on major record labels, where it's like some bands will get on these major labels and then, you know, nothing will really happen with them, or they'll get on a major label and they'll blow up and then change their sound. So it's like it's a double-edged sword, so to speak.
Yeah, so this EP here, it was recorded at Cove City Studios in New York, and it was mixed and mastered at Morrisound Studios in Florida.
Yeah, so this EP, man, for all intents and purposes, is, at this point in time, as far as anybody is concerned, the band, this is their final recording. They're breaking up after this EP, and they did for a while, up until 2003. And this is before bands were like taking hiatuses pretty often and coming back together, you know, to reform and just play some shows or put out a new record, whatever. And I think Suffocation is probably one of the first bands who like really did that. They didn't say they were taking a hiatus. They said they were breaking up, and they pretty much did. You know, they lost 2 members.
Yeah, exactly. Like look, Mike Smith had gone. I believe one of their bass guitar. Oh, not bass guitar. Yeah, someone else had gone. And yeah, exactly. And yeah, like we said before, they were off kind of not only they lost this, but they'd also gone to a different record label as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much after this EP, Doug Cerrito and Chris Richards both left the band, and Doug Cerrito was like one of the main guitar writers of the band. So anything post this record is more Guy Marché, who actually we should give a shout out to Guy. He is suffering from cancer right now. He has like a GoFundMe set up to help him pay his bills, because you know that shit ain't cheap. So if you guys happen to see that floating around, definitely go help out Guy. He's a cool dude. I was lucky enough to meet him quite a few times when I was touring, and I'll tell you a really fun fact about Guy. He does magic.
Oh,
like
no.
Like we'd be setting up or like loading in and shit, and he'd be like, "Hey, come here, let me show you his magic trick." And like he would just do all these fucking magic tricks, dude. He was so good at it. It was fucking awesome.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely saw it around. I actually remember kicking a couple of bucks into that one too. So we'll link to it if it's still going on, and we encourage everyone to give what you can.
Yes. Yeah. So anyways, getting back to this record, Scott Burns produced it, like we said. He also did Effigy, The Forgotten, and Pierce from Within, which is crazy because, like I said, Pierce from Within has a lot more bass-heavy kind of sound to it, but it's like, especially the final song on that record is just like ridiculously heavy. And I think that's one thing that made Suffocation like really stand out from a lot of other death metal bands, was like how heavy they could really get. And not only that, the vocals. Frank Mullen's vocals are probably, in my opinion, the best death metal vocals of all time. There's something about like the way he clearly enunciates a lot of words. You can hear everything he's saying, and not only that, he just has that fucking brutality that is unmatched by a lot of bands, I think.
Yeah, and considering like, okay, yeah, it's 1998. They didn't have kind of the legacy status that they got when they kind of reformed, and they actually were putting out, solid and consistent albums. Keeping in mind, really, apart from this EP, there were only 2 albums that they really ever produced. The second album, Breeding Spawn, I do not know what the story is with that. That would be one of the most fantastic kind of like records to know why everything went the way it went. But that album is almost borderline unlistenable.
Agreed.
And it's not because it's bad songwriting or they changed it up.
It just sounds bad.
Yeah, whoever was basically like had to press the record button. I don't know what happened there, but that is just, it almost sounds like it's being like recorded inside a trash can, inside a dumpster.
Yeah, it's got a lot of
inside like the what is to become the Sedanga album.
Yeah, it's got way too much fucking reverb and like, it's bad, man. Like that's the one record I will never listen to in their discography. Sometimes I won't even listen to their first record either because it's not recorded that great.
Yeah, but at least it's still kind of
it's listenable.
It's listenable, yeah. And also, funny enough, they've pretty much re-recorded almost every song off that album in future releases from 2003 onwards.
Yeah, which is cool that they did that. And I think they knew that they kind of had to without re-recording the entire album in one go. So it was smart on their part. Basically, you could find which tracks they re-recorded, put it as an album, and like it would work. So
yeah, exactly. And when you do go back and listen to it, they all sound fucking great.
Yes. Yeah, they definitely fixed the problems that were very, very apparent on that record. I'm sure we'll get to that record eventually, but yeah, man, what a fucking... I'm surprised they recovered from that, to be honest. That's usually, especially back in that day when that was released, that should have been like a nail in the coffin for a band. But they persevered. They put out like solid as fuck records after that. I mean, for most of the 90s. And, now here they are with this EP and they decide to break up, which is unfortunate. I mean, even looking ahead to where the band's at now, their past 2 albums haven't been particularly great. They've been okay. And I mean, Frank's barely in the band. At this point, he's not in the band. They're touring without him. Guy's not in the band because his medical problems. It's just like, never have I wanted a band to just like stop making music. Or if they are going to make music, don't do it under the name of Suffocation. Like, just start a new band. People will still follow you if you say, hey, it's got members of Suffocation in it. I promise you. But I don't know, it kind of sucks because, I mean, I'm pretty sure this last album they put out is how they're going to go out. And it wasn't a really strong album to go out on, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some kind of stories that we'll kind of get into when later in this kind of piece here.
Yeah. Yeah, so getting kind of back to this, man, Burns produced it, like we said, and it would prove to be their last album recorded with him, because by this time they had reformed, and he had when they did reform in 2003, he retired from the music industry, so this was kind of one of the last few albums that Scott Burns produced and recorded, which is crazy because, like, the dude's had a hell of a career. You would think you would want to keep going a little bit with it, but, there's only so much you can do, and I guess he was comfortable with just kind of stopping with what he was doing.
Yeah, I believe the last record he produced was Obituaries Frozen in Time back in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
I think he left to go do computer programming, which is like, I do that for a living, and it's like, why the fuck would you?
Had to get a real gerb.
Yeah, pretty fucking much.
The song Catatonia is a re-recording of a song from Human Waste, which is also a pretty good EP, and Funeral Inception. So Funeral Inception is the one song that I point to on this record that is just fucking... It's probably one of the best death metal songs ever. It's got grooves. It's fast. That little like quote unquote slam breakdown part where it just kind of stops. It's silent for a second, and then it just goes into that jun 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 jun. Fucking Mullen just going like God forbid. It's so stupid heavy, man, and it's on an EP. It's fucking crazy to me.
Yeah, no, and it's such the right way to start off an EP like this as well.
Yeah. It's got that little soundbite, the intro sentence, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. It's actually from the movie The Usual Suspects. So, there you go. Everybody's seen The Usual Suspects. Kaiser Soze, Kevin Spacey.
Scumbag.
Yeah. So that aphorism is originally found in Charles Baudelaire's 1864 novel Le Jour Général. I don't know what that means, but it's French. So there you go.
Yeah. So Mike Smith didn't actually appear on this EP, and he stated in a 2009 interview that you could argue that the version of Catatonia on this EP here was a bit better than the original one that was actually recorded by him on Human Waste. He's not quite sure why this EP needed it, but it's hardly a complaint, he added.
Maybe they were just trying to figure out a song to put on there, EP, especially if you don't have anything new. If you need to re-record something or do a cover song, that's usually the way to go. And Human Waste, I think, came out in 1993, so it's not like that song was that old.
Yeah, I think it came out in 1990. The Human Waste was the EP, I think. Whatchamacallit, the first album was like 91 or 92. Yeah, Effigy of the Forgotten was 91.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. The band obviously knows that their early stuff doesn't sound the greatest, so I assume that they really they like re-recording stuff to make it sound better. And I'm not complaining it's on there.
Yeah, and it's a fun song as well. Like it's still it's a solid song. It's not like, oh yeah, we just got picked threw a dart at a wall and then that's the one we're doing.
Yeah.
It's a good song. It's a good structured song. And I still think it's for a time it's still part of their live kind of staple.
Oh, totally. Yeah, big time. That's their hit, I would think. One of.
Yeah, it's either that one, Funeral Inception, mm-hmm. or Infecting the Crypts off their first album.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard them play Funeral Inception live, man, and it fucking crushed. I don't think I've ever heard a heavier song live. I remember actually because me and Weatherford went to the show together, and we were actually going to see Carcass because it was the first time Carcass had played in a decade. It was their reunion shows. So Suffocation went on right before them, and he was like, yeah, I've seen them. They're good. And then they come on, and it was so violently heavy, you could feel it in your bones. And after the first couple songs were done, we just kind of look at each other wide-eyed, and we were like, what the fuck?
I think
so heavy, dude.
Yeah. Well, funny you mentioned that. I think I've actually got to see Suffocation play once before, and I think they were on the Blood Oath tour, mm-hmm. Back in 2010. But they were touring out with, get this, Winds of Plague, and then they were opening up for Arch Enemy.
What?
And you had not seen the most just fucking you know exactly who everyone is here for.
Yeah.
The old blokes are there for Suffocation, the kids are there for Winds of Plague, and the girls, and again, not to sexist or whatever, but it's you could just basically tell who everyone was here for, and there was, and that Venn kind of diagram where everyone kind of overlapped was so small that it was you'd basically, you wouldn't even be able to throw a pin, get a pin through it. It remained to be one of the funniest kind of experiences. and it was actually at a pretty big venue as well. So, yeah, I'm surprised that was a tour package, and B, it actually managed to like sell it out. So,
yeah, that is a very weird mix of bands right there. I could see myself like. I know for sure I'd be there for Suffocation, but I know I would watch Arch Enemy because I do like older Arch Enemy.
Yeah, this was like 2010. So
Angela's still in the
this
band.
is when Angela's still in the band.
Okay.
And they're actually still putting out solid music.
Cool. Yeah, if it's with the new chick, I'm not interested in that Arch Enemy.
Neither am I, dude.
Yeah, and I would watch Winds of Plague, but yeah, I don't know if I'd be there for them.
They were comically bad.
Yeah, no comment on that because I toured with him. So,
but I'd fucking see him now.
Yeah,
I'd fucking see him now. That new album was good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I thought I'd listen to it more than I did, but I haven't found myself going back to it, unfortunately.
Like a couple of songs come on my playlist for like Spotify every now and then off it. Yeah. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah. Well, I mean, closing out, I guess, I think a lot of this EP kind of set a standard for a lot of bands, and it's very apparent if you look where like this album kind of ends and all the bands that picked up after this. I mean, the sad thing too with this EP is like it was caught somewhere between two stools. It's like at a time when death metal was becoming less and less interesting to everyone except people who were like really committed to it. But they were also in this transitional time for bands that were like pushing themselves just a little bit harder as well. And even if it wasn't in like the glory days of death metal, this EP is like a fucking game changer right here. And for them to go out for seemingly like this was it, for them to go out on this EP, man, what a way to go out. So, obviously we know as history shows us they got back together a few years later and put out solid records after that, probably up until about Blood Oath, I would say. And then
but nothing ever reached the height of this record.
Yeah, which is crazy because I think it's crazy that 4 or 5 songs are more kind of catching than full length albums for them. But,
yeah, and I feel like you're able to basically contain all of that kind of energy and just kind of just like brutality inside 16 minutes of music than you can in say like 40 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it really fucking suits this band well, is just kind of like short bursts. It's like a shotgun, not an assault rifle, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree, man. I kind of think that even as well, if you listen to their full lengths, you can pinpoint the songs that should be taken off that record. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
You can pinpoint those songs, take them off the record, put them on an EP, and it'd be the best fucking EP ever.
Yeah, exactly. You know where you know where to trim the fat.
Yeah. But I mean, man, Suffocation, as far as I'm concerned, legendary band. Everything they do is fucking. Like I said, they have their own thing going, and I wish that their later output, was better than their earlier stuff. But
yeah,
it's kind of like the middle is where it's at for them.
Yeah, and like everyone talks about like the big four of like thrash metal, and then there's like who would be in your big four of like like American death metal? And it's like, well, these guys are in there.
Yeah, I would have to agree, big time.
100%, these guys are in there. Maybe at the spot that like Anthrax is, but they're in there.
Oh man, so that sums up April of 1998. I would say this is the best month, but we're not even halfway through, and I know how much better it gets, especially once we get to like October. That seems to be the month that everybody drops a record, and there is some crazy ass shit that comes out in October. So,
yeah, got to get it out in time for Christmas.
Yeah. So I mean, dude, solid month, I would have to say. Like pretty much all these records are fucking fantastic, game changing. Quite a few of them as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing the start of something of just bands that have been consistently putting out music for 20 years now, and we have seen just things that are it really does set the kind of the stage for what is to come, not only in this year but also in the next 10 years.
Yes. Yeah, the dawn of the millennium will change everything as we know it. Especially with these final 2 years of the 90s, it's, especially when nu metal makes its appearance. It just...
Yes!
Yep. So, that's April of 1998. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully check out some of these records. Definitely check out... I mean, for those of you that listened to our earlier episodes, you know that, the intro used to be Funeral Inception. Before I got freaked out and I was like, I don't know if we should be playing a real song. We could get pulled. Now I realize it doesn't fucking matter. But,
Yeah, and we're not going back.
No, we're not going back. So.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else? Is that it? I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to do anything else today, please listen to Despise the Suns. It'll only take up about 17 minutes of your time, and you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, I agree. You'll probably be like, why the fuck can't they make more music like this?
Yeah.
So, follow us on social media. You guys know that. Some of you already do. Hopefully you guys dig our new art direction that we're going right now. I spent a lot of time changing all of our covers and updating our website very slowly. It's like a slow rollout. Like, things look kind of weird in some spots, and that's okay. But once the final product is there, I think you guys will dig it. And hopefully you guys dig these new little album covers that we do for each episode. They're a lot more cohesive. They're a lot more stylized. That's kind of what we're doing with that. We got some record reviews coming out. I'm gonna write one for the new At the Gates. I think Gruesome as well. Graveyard.
Yeah,
we got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I think I actually might do something.
You should.
I got some time free. I can do it.
Hell yeah, do it. HeavyMetalHistoryPodcast.com is where you can find everything. At Heavy Metal Pod on Twitter. I did another podcast recently that's like a horror movie podcast with this dude I met off Reddit. It's called Netflix and Kill. You can check that out if you want. I think we talked about the movie Mute, and I did another one where we talked about the movie Street Trash. It's
Spoiler
fun.
alert, is Mute any good?
I liked it. A lot of people didn't, but I liked it.
Okay, I trust your recommendation. I'll check that one out, man.
It's dark, man. It's not like a fun movie at all. It's pretty dark.
Good, that's what I want.
Yeah, and seeing Paul Rudd play like a villain was fucking refreshing, man. I'm really as much as I like Paul Rudd being funny, it really shows the range this dude has. Like, you fucking hate his character by the end of it.
Well, that's like
it's
I said,
a good thing.
I mean, yes, it can only be a good thing, and I'm in the mood for something a bit like that. I got something to do this weekend when I go away.
Yeah, definitely check it out. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, leave a review somewhere if you want to. You don't have to, but it does help us out, whether it's on Spotify or iTunes. Shoot us a line on whatever you want. Follow us. You get the deal. And until next week, cheers, cunts.
Cheers, cunts. See ya.
Be excellent to each other. And... Party on, dudes!